I need you to calm down and show me some identification right now. Do you understand the charges?
What are you talking about? I haven't done anything. Sir, can I ask you a few questions? Why am I being stopped?
Rain slicked the pavement in a thin, oily sheen. The flashing red and blue lights painted the wet street like a wound. Marcus Hale stood beside his black sedan, hands raised, breath visible in the cold night air. He was dressed in a tailored navy suit, still smelling faintly of the mayor's office, of polished wood and coffee. But the officer's voice cut through the rain like a blade. Step back, hands where I can see them. The crowd forming on the sidewalk stared, phones rising like silent witnesses. Marcus tried to steady his voice. Officer, I said back. The officer's hand twitched near his holster. Marcus froze. His heartbeat slammed against his ribs. He could feel the lens of every bystander. White faces, uncertain faces, watching the moment turn. The officer's partner muttered something. The name on the ID didn't match the picture in his head. He didn't expect a mayor in a suit driving alone in this part of town. Marcus inhaled, fighting the panic clawing at his throat. You're making a mistake. The officer sneered. The only mistake here is thinking your skin gets you a pass. A gasp broke from the crowd. Then came the click of handcuffs, cold against Marcus's wrists, the sound snapping through the night like thunder. A woman shouted, "That's Mayor Hale." The officer's face went pale. The rain kept falling, and Marcus realized, too late, that the cameras had already caught everything. The steel door of the precinct shut behind Marcus with a hollow clang. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, pale and unforgiving. His wrists throbbed beneath the cuff marks, deep red crescents that stung when he moved. Officer Whitaker led him down the corridor, boots echoing off tile. "Name," the officer barked, but Marcus inhaled through his nose. "Marcus Hale." Whitaker scoffed. "You sticking with that?" "I am Marcus Hale, the mayor of Brookhaven." A pause, brief, disbelieving, then laughter. "Sure you are, and I'm the governor." Marcus swallowed. "Check my ID. Call your chief." Whitaker snatched the wallet, flipping through it like trash. "Fake. It's not fake." Whitaker slammed it onto the counter. "You think a suit and a speech pattern buys you authority? You were obstructing a stop. I was parked, legally. You raised your voice. I asked why my car was being searched." The officer leaned close, his breath acrid with coffee and power. "You people never learn when to stay quiet." The words landed like blows. Marcus stared past him at the cracked linoleum, the humming vending machine, the clock that seemed to mock him with every second. Another officer entered, a younger woman, clipboard in hand. She froze "Wait, is that?" Whitaker snapped. "Process him." She hesitated. "Sir, that's Mayor Hale." Whitaker turned, confusion flickering. "What?" She showed him the ID again. "It's real. That's his photo." Silence, the kind that fills every corner of a room. Marcus's chest rose and fell, barely containing the storm. Whitaker's jaw tightened. "Get the chief." Minutes stretched like wire. The chief arrived, gray-haired and stone-faced. His eyes darted from Marcus to the cuffs. "Get those off him now." Whitaker hesitated. "Sir, now." The cuffs clicked open. Marcus rubbed his wrists, the marks angry and visible. The chief cleared his throat. "Mayor Hale, I assure you, this is a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding." Marcus's voice trembled, not from fear, but restraint. "You humiliated me in front of half the city." Whitaker muttered. Protocol was followed. Marcus turned sharply. "Protocol doesn't mean putting a gun in my face because I exist in my own city after dark." The chief glanced toward the glass door. Reporters were already gathering outside. The storm was out of their control. "Mayor, please," he said softly. "Let's talk privately." Marcus didn't move. "No, talk to them." He pointed to the cameras beyond the glass. "They're the ones who watched this happen." Whitaker shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting to the crowd. The chief exhaled. "We'll release a statement." Marcus stared at him, eyes cold, steady. "You already did." He turned, pushing through the double doors into the rain, flashes bursting as microphones thrust toward him. "Mayor Hale, what happened inside?" Marcus paused under the downpour. His voice carried through the noise, calm and sharp as glass. "What happened?" he said. "America happened." Then he walked away, each step echoing like a verdict. The clip hit the internet before sunrise. By 6:12 a.m., #Mayor Hale was trending. The video, 2 shaky minutes of flashing lights, rain, and humiliation, looped endlessly across screens. Marcus's voice, strained but steady, replayed over the officer's barked commands. Then came the line that cut deepest. You think your skin gets you a pass. By noon, it had 4.3 million views. Marcus watched it in silence from his living room. The sound low, his face unreadable. His wife Lena stood behind him, arms crossed tightly over her chest. The TV light flickered across her face. He didn't even hesitate. She whispered, just assumed. Marcus muted the screen. It's what they always assume. A moment of quiet stretched between them. Outside, sirens wailed distantly. Brookhaven waking up to scandal. The doorbell rang. His chief of staff, Darren Keene, stood dripping on the porch, phone in hand. We're in crisis mode, he said. CNN, the Tribune, every outlet's calling. Half the council wants a statement. Marcus rubbed his temples. They want damage control. They want to know if you're pressing charges. Lena shot Darren a look. He was arrested for driving while black. What's to debate? Darren shifted uneasily. Optics, the police unions already spinning it, saying Whitaker didn't recognize the mayor, that it was dark, raining standard caution. Marcus turned away from them both. Through the window, he could see the city skyline, his skyline bathed in gray light. They'll call it a misunderstanding. Then, they'll move on. Not this time, Lena said quietly. He didn't answer. At Eastwood High, a crowd gathered around a student's phone. The clip played Agon Rain, cuffs, disbelief. Jaden Hale stood in the center, jaw clenched. Someone whispered, "That's your dad." He didn't respond, just grabbed his backpack and walked out. Outside, he called his father. Marcus answered on the second ring. "Jaden, why didn't you fight back?" the boy asked. His voice cracked. "You just stood there." Marcus swallowed. "Because fighting back gets people killed." Static filled the silence. "Dad, I can't go to school right now. Everyone's looking at me like I'm a headline." "Come home," Marcus said softly. Thought by afternoon, the mayor's office was under siege. Reporters lined the marble steps. Inside, the press secretary's voice carried from room to room. "No comments until official review. Please respect due process." Darren found Marcus at his desk, phone buzzing nonstop. "The governor's office just called," Darren said. "They're monitoring the situation." Translation: "They're scared." Marcus leaned back, eyes hollow. "Scared of what?" "The truth. They're scared of you making this racial." Marcus stared at him. "It is racial." "Yeah," Darren said. "But you can't say that, at least not yet. You're the mayor, not an activist." Marcus rose from his chair. "Maybe that's the problem." That night, Marcus stood before the bathroom mirror, tie loosened, eyes bloodshot. The reflection staring back was unfamiliar, still him. But something had broken. Lena entered quietly, holding her tablet. "They're showing your arrest again. Commentators arguing if you provoked it." He gave a humorless laugh. "I provoked being black in public." She reached for his hand. "You don't have to carry it all." "Yes, I do." His voice hardened. "If I don't, they'll rewrite what happened before the week ends." She looked at him a long time. "Then make them see. On your terms." He nodded slowly. "Tomorrow, I'll call a press conference." Lena hesitated, and after that, Marcus looked at his reflection again. The mayor, the man, the target. "After that," he said, "I stop pretending I'm safe." Meanwhile, across town, Officer Whitaker sat in his car outside the station, the glow of his phone lighting his face. His inbox was filled with messages, some from colleagues, others from strangers. "Hang in there, brother. The media's twisting it." He played the race card. "Don't apologize." He scrolled through the comments under the video. Half of them called him a racist. The other half called him a patriot. He threw the phone onto the seat and gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. "They'll forget," he muttered. "They always forget." But in his gut, he knew this time. They WOULDN. Single quotes. Morning came gray and heavy. The city square overflowed with reporters, cameras, and citizens carrying signs. "Justice for Hale. Stop police bias. One law for all." Marcus stepped up to the podium, wind tugging at his coat. The microphones bristled like steel thorns. He looked out at the crowd, faces of anger, sympathy, disbelief. He took a breath. "2 nights ago," he began, "I was arrested without cause, in my own city. I was handcuffed, humiliated, and treated as less than a man because of the color of my skin." A murmur rippled through the crowd. He continued, voice steady but burning. "I have spent my career serving this city, but that night, none of it mattered. What mattered was how I looked to an officer who saw a threat instead of a person." Cameras flashed. Somewhere in the back, a protester shouted his name. "I'm not here to demand vengeance," Marcus said. "I'm here to demand truth." He paused, scanning the crowd. And if that truth makes you uncomfortable, maybe it should. Applause broke like thunder. The clip of his speech would be shared, dissected, and debated within hours. Another video in the nation's endless cycle of outrage. But beneath the applause, Marcus knew the storm had only just begun. The review hearing began behind closed doors, beige walls, burnt coffee, and the faint smell of sweat. Officer Whitaker sat at one end of the long table, hands clasped tightly. Across from him, a panel of 3 internal affairs officers murmured through folders of reports and transcripts. The senior officer, Lieutenant Ferris, looked up. Officer Whitaker, you understand the reason for this inquiry? Yes, sir. Your report claims the suspect was uncooperative and reached into his jacket. Do you still stand by that statement? Whitaker's jaw flexed. Yes, I acted within protocol. Ferris slid a photo across the table. Marcus Hale, hands raised, drenched in rain. That's the mayor of Brookhaven. Whitaker's eyes flickered. At the time, I didn't know that. Would it have mattered? Whitaker hesitated. It shouldn't. The room went quiet. The silence felt heavier than judgment. Ferris leaned back, exhaling through his nose. The department is under fire. Whitaker, the chief wants this resolved quietly. So I'm the scapegoat. No one said that. Yes, you did, Whitaker snapped. You just said it politely. Ferris's stare hardened. Watch yourself. Whitaker's fists clenched. I followed procedure. You all know it. You'd have done the same if it were your shift, your street, your instinct. None of them disagreed. That was the point. Across town, Marcus sat in his office, a half-finished press statement on his desk. Darren stood by the window, phone in hand. The department says Whitaker acted in good faith. They're calling it a procedural miscommunication. Marcus laughed bitterly. Good faith doesn't put cuffs on a mayor. They're offering a private meeting and a public apology. PR's calling it a win. Marcus looked up sharply. A win, Darren. They dragged me through the street like a criminal. My son's being called a liar at school. That's not a win. Darren sighed. You're not wrong. But they've built the narrative already. They'll say the system's reviewing itself. The public will lose interest. Marcus pushed back from the desk. Then I'll make sure they don't. The meeting with Police Chief Rourke happened later that afternoon. His office smelled of tobacco and old carpet. Behind his desk, a thin blue flag hung beside the city emblem. Not equal, just parallel. Mayor Hal Rourke began, his voice slow, deliberate. First, let me express my regret. Officer Whitaker misunderstood this situation. Marcus sat across from him, hands folded tightly. He didn't misunderstand. He profiled. Rourke frowned slightly. We don't use that word. Sir, you should start. The chief leaned forward. You have to understand the pressure my officers are under. Split-second decisions don't justify split-second racism. Marcus cut in. Rourke blinked, momentarily stunned by the directness. I understand your frustration. No, Marcus said coldly. You understand optics. You don't understand what it feels like to have your life reduced to a threat assessment. The chief looked away, eyes hardening. Mayor, you're turning this into something political. Marcus rose from his chair. It already is. The moment your badge became a shield instead of a promise. The chief's jaw tensed, but he didn't reply. Marcus walked out without shaking his hand. Later that night, the city council convened an emergency meeting. The press was barred from entry, but whispers leaked fast. Councilwoman Price, voice dripping with concern, leaned toward Marcus. Mayor, while we empathize, we must consider stability. Escalating this could harm the city's reputation. Marcus stared at her. You're worried about the city's reputation. It's already on every national headline. Councilman Lowe chimed in, smooth and cautious. Let's allow the police to handle their internal process. Marcus shot back. That's the problem. The police only handle their own. The room went still. Price sighed. You're angry, and rightly so. But you have to think strategically. Marcus looked around the table, faces avoiding his eyes. Strategic silence got us here. He stood. I won't play that game. Back at the station, Whitaker packed his locker slowly. A younger officer approached, nervous. They're saying you might be suspended. Whitaker didn't look up. They won't. They can't. I'm the department's mistake, not its sacrifice. You really think you'll keep your badge? Whitaker's mouth twisted. They'll need me when the noise dies down. The uniform always wins in the end. The younger officer hesitated. And if it doesn't? Whitaker's eyes flicked to him, cold, unwavering. Then someone higher up takes the fall. It's never the one who pulled the trigger. It's the one who got caught. He slammed his locker shut. That night, Marcus sat alone in his office, the city lights flickering below. On the desk lay two statements, one official, one personal. The official one apologized for the incident. The personal one told the truth. He stared at both, then slowly slid the official draft into the trash. The hum of the city outside was constant, like the sound of a wound that never closed. Marcus whispered to the empty room. If the system protects him, then it condemns itself. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The fight was no longer about one arrest. It was about the wall that stood behind every badge, tall, silent, and unbreakable. At least, until someone started tearing at the bricks. The first crack came quietly. Marcus had begun to sleep at the office. If sleep was even the right word, half dreams interrupted by the buzz of alerts, calls from reporters, and the haunting loop of that video replaying in his mind. Every time he closed his eyes, he was back in the rain. The metal bite of cuffs against his wrist stopped by the fourth morning. His reflection looked hollowed out. Lena appeared at the door, coat still on, a paper bag of breakfast sandwiches in her hand. You can't live here, Marcus. He didn't look up from his laptop. I need to. She set the bag down gently. You need to breathe. The city isn't going anywhere. He glanced at her, eyes rimmed red. The city's fine. It's me they want gone. Her jaw tightened. Don't say that. He pushed away from the desk. They're calling for my resignation on talk radio. The party wants me to issue another apology. Whitaker's lawyer went on TV calling himself a victim. A victim? Lena sat on the edge of the desk. Then let them choke on their lies. You don't owe anyone your silence. Marcus exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. If I speak, they'll turn it into politics. If I stay quiet, they'll erase me. Then speak anyway, she said. Speak for every man they've buried with excuses. That afternoon, Alina Cruz showed up at City Hall without an appointment. She was a local journalist, sharp, persistent, and perpetually on the edge of being banned from press briefings. She walked straight into Marcus's office, uninvited but certain. You've got 5 minutes, she said, pulling out her recorder. Marcus looked up, mildly amused. You do realize I can have you escorted out. Then it'll be the story of the week. Mayor silences reporter following police arrest scandal. Your call. He leaned back in his chair. You're not subtle. Neither's racism, she said flatly. He studied her for a moment, then gestured to the seat across from him. What do you want to know? Alina hit record. Start with the night of the arrest. Why were you alone in that neighborhood? Because it's my city, Marcus said, and because I thought I could walk anywhere in it. And now I know better. She leaned in. You think this is just one bad cop? Marcus shook his head. No, it's a system trained to mistake fear for duty. She paused, then asked, Are you going to sue? I want change, not headlines. You'll get neither if you play it safe. He smiled faintly. You don't give much room for comfort. Comfort, she said, is the reason nothing ever changes. When she left, she didn't say goodbye, just turned off her recorder and walked out like she already had the story written in her bones. That night, Lena found Marcus sitting on the porch steps, a stack of papers beside him. Is that what I think it is? She asked. He nodded. Resignation draft, just in case. Her eyes flashed. No, you're not giving them that satisfaction. I'm not sure this job is even mine anymore. You earned it. They're trying to steal it through shame. He sighed. The system doesn't care what I earned. It only cares what I represent. Lena sat beside him. Then represent something they can't erase. He looked at her, really looked for the first time in days. If I do this, it won't be about politics anymore. It'll be a fight. Then fight, she said quietly, but don't lose yourself doing it. The following morning, Alina's article dropped. Headline, The Mayor Who Stood Still, and the City That Looked Away. It spread like wildfire. Her writing was sharp, unflinching. If authority can mistake a mayor for a criminal, what does that say for the rest of us? By noon, the mayor's office was swamped. Reporters called non-stop, demanding statements. Protesters gathered outside City Hall holding signs that read, We see you, Mayor. Darren burst into Marcus's office. We're losing control of the narrative. No, Marcus said calmly. We're finding it. Alina's piece is making you a symbol, Darren warned. You're not just Marcus Hale anymore. You're the headline. Marcus stood. Then I'd better live up to it. That evening, Marcus addressed the city from the steps of City Hall. Unannounced, unfiltered. The crowd was smaller than before, but charged with emotion. Phones lifted. Cameras streamed. I've spent years asking people to believe in justice, he began, voice carrying across the plaza. Now I'm asking the system that preaches it to prove it. He paused, scanning the faces before him. Weary, hopeful, angry. This isn't about one officer. It's about every moment when power chose fear over fairness. The crowd murmured, tense and still. I'm not resigning, he said finally. I'm not apologizing for surviving. I'm staying because someone has to show them what accountability looks like. Applause surged, thunderous and raw. Lena stood at the edge of the crowd, eyes wet but proud. High above them, in an unlit office window, Chief Rourke watched the scene unfold on a muted TV. Behind him, Whitaker stood in silence. Rourke spoke without turning. He's not backing down. Whitaker's voice was low, cold. Then we'll remind him who runs this city after dark. The chief didn't answer. He didn't have to. The next storm was already forming. The studio lights burned white and hot, bright enough to erase color and mercy. Marcus sat upright in the chair, suit immaculate, expression steady. Across from him, news anchor Victoria Lang flipped through her cards like a surgeon sorting blades. Mayor Helshie began smoothly. Thank you for agreeing to speak with us. He nodded once. Thank you for having me. She smiled, practiced, neutral. You've become the center of a national conversation about race and policing. How do you respond to those who say you're politicizing a personal encounter? Marcus's fingers interlocked on his knee. When someone with power abuses it, that's not personal. That's public. If speaking about it makes people uncomfortable, that discomfort's part of the truth. Lang tilted her head. But some claim you escalated the situation that night. That your tone, my tone. Marcus interrupted. Calm but sharp. My tone didn't draw a weapon. My tone didn't assume I was dangerous. My tone was survival. The camera zoomed in. The silence tightened. Lang recovered quickly. Do you believe the officer was racist? Marcus exhaled. I believe he acted on bias so deep he doesn't see it. And that's what's killing this country. Not hatred you can point at, but the kind that hides behind policy. Lang hesitated, caught between professionalism and something like shame. You sound angry, Mayor. I am, he said, but I'm not alone. By nightfall, clips from the interview flooded every social feed. Some praised him as a leader. Others called him divisive, reckless. Hashtags multiplied like wildfire. Hashtag stand with Hale. Hashtag law and order first. Lena scrolled through the chaos at the kitchen table, shaking her head. They've turned it into sides. Marcus poured coffee he wouldn't drink. That's how they survive, by dividing outrage. The phone buzzed. It was Darren. Marcus, we've got a problem, he said, voice tight. The police union just held a press conference. They're saying you endangered an officer, resisted arrest, and made threatening gestures. Marcus froze. They're falsifying reports. They've got camera angles we've never seen, selective edits. They're painting you as aggressive. Lena slammed her palm on the table. That's a lie. Darren's voice lowered. It's strategic. They're protecting their own. And it's working. Your approval numbers are slipping. Marcus pinched the bridge of his nose. They're rewriting reality in real time. You need to hit back with evidence, Darren urged. Publicly, Marcus looked toward the window. Distant city lights flickering like tired stars. Evidence doesn't matter to people who don't want to see. Hours later, his son Jaden came downstairs, phone in hand, face pale. Dad, they're saying you swung at him. Marcus closed his eyes. It's not true. I know, Jaden whispered. But the kids at school, they don't. Marcus reached out, resting a hand on his shoulder. Don't let their fear become yours. Jaden swallowed hard. You said that's what the system does, right? Makes you doubt yourself until you stop fighting. Marcus nodded slowly. Exactly. Jaden looked up at him. Then promise me you won't stop. For the first time that day, Marcus smiled. I won't. At midnight, Alina Cruz published a short article online titled The Smear Before the Silence. It opened with a single line. When the truth threatens power, power rewrites the script. Within hours, her post was trending. Screenshots of falsified police edits began circulating, along with eyewitness clips contradicting the official account. The union's story started to crumble. But in the dark of his office, Marcus felt no victory, only exhaustion. Every step toward truth came with a deeper cost: safety, reputation, family peace. He stared at the glowing city map on his wall. The streets looked like veins, and somewhere beneath them, corruption pulsed steady as blood. He whispered to himself, almost as prayer, let the truth hurt, just let it reach them. Outside, thunder rolled, the kind that promised more than rain. The lawsuit landed on Marcus's desk like a gunshot. Whitaker v. Hale. Defamation, emotional distress, career damage. Marcus read the header twice, jaw tightening. Across from him, Darren dropped a folder of early press clippings. "They're calling it the counterattack," he said grimly. "Whitaker's framing himself as the real victim, says your accusations ruined his life." Marcus flipped through the pages. The headlines were predictable. Hero cop fights back. Mayor's racial agenda. His lawyer's smart, Darren continued. He's not fighting facts. He's fighting perception. Marcus set the papers down. Then, he's fighting dirty. Lena entered, holding her phone. "Dirty's working. They've got half the city calling him brave." Marcus's eyes narrowed. Brave doesn't mean right. That night, the story dominated every broadcast. The anchors spoke in polished sympathy. "Officer Whitaker, a 12-year veteran, says his family's been harassed. His children bullied, all because of the mayor's accusations." Whitaker's face filled the screen, his voice rehearsed. "I've served this community with honor. I made one mistake not recognizing him, but now I'm the one being crucified." The camera lingered on his trembling hand, the faint sheen of a tear that wasn't quite real. Lena muted the TV. "He's performing," she said quietly. Marcus stared at the silent screen. "And America loves a performance." In the following days, Marcus's approval ratings plummeted. Council members stopped returning calls. Sponsors pulled funding from his community initiatives. The whispers in City Hall grew louder. "He's toxic now. Unfit for leadership." Darren paced the office. Phone pressed to his ear. "We're hemorrhaging support. Even allies are distancing. They're scared this will drag the whole party down." Marcus stood by the window, staring at the rain streaking down the glass. "So they'd rather abandon the truth than stand next to it." Darren sighed. "Politics is survival." "Then I'm done surviving," Marcus said quietly. "It's time they choke on what they built." Meanwhile, Alina Cruz was digging deeper. She'd spent days tracing Whitaker's record, calling old colleagues, cross-referencing cases. Most hung up. A few hesitated long enough to give fragments. Disciplinary report buried. Complaint disappeared. Body cam failure again. Her instincts sharpened like glass. She typed furiously through the night, eyes stinging from exhaustion. When her editor called at 2 a.m., she answered without looking away from her screen. "You're playing with fire, Cruz," he warned. "They'll bury you before they let that story run." She kept typing. "Then I'll dig deeper." The next morning, Marcus's office received an envelope with no return address. Inside were photocopies, old internal memos, one stamped confidential. He scanned the text. 3 formal complaints against Whitaker. Excessive force. Racial profiling. All resolved internally. He looked up at Lena, who stood watching him. "They knew," he whispered. "They've always known." Lena's voice was quiet, trembling. "You can't fight the whole department alone." Marcus met her eyes. "Watch me." At noon, he called an emergency press conference. Reporters packed the room, cameras humming, the air thick with anticipation. Marcus stepped to the podium, holding the documents. "The officer who filed a lawsuit against me has a history," he began. "A history your police department concealed." The flashes began instantly. "These reports show a pattern, not a mistake. The same department that calls him honorable has been protecting him for years, and now, when I speak out, they call me divisive." He raised a page, the seal of the department visible under the lights. "This isn't just corruption, it's conspiracy." A shout from the back. "Mayor Hale, are you accusing the chief directly?" Marcus didn't blink. "If the chief signed these, then yes." Chaos erupted. Shouts, camera shutters, cell phones lifted high. Marcus leaned closer to the microphones. "If justice won't investigate itself, I'll do it for them." That night, his statement aired live. The city trembled with the shockwave. Inside the station, Chief Rourke watched the broadcast in stony silence. Around him, officers exchanged nervous looks. Whitaker stood near the doorway, face pale. "He's bluffing," Whitaker muttered. "He doesn't have the full files." Rourke didn't look away from the screen. "Even if he doesn't, the idea's already out there. That's how stories kill you. Not with proof, but with suspicion." Whitaker's jaw clenched. "Then, we end the story." The chief turned slowly. "You do nothing." Whitaker took a step closer. "He's ruining me." Rourke's voice turned cold. "You ruined yourself when you put cuffs on the wrong man." For the first time, Whitaker saw it. The shift. The wall he'd trusted was beginning to crumble. and it was leaving him behind. At home, Marcus sat with Lena and Jaden, exhaustion carved deep into his face. You think this will end it? Jaden asked. Marcus shook his head. No. This just exposes the rot. The end comes later, when people stop pretending it's not there. Lena reached over, taking his hand. Then promise me you'll survive long enough to see that end. He hesitated, then squeezed her hand gently. If not me, someone else will. She looked at him, her voice breaking. That's not good enough, Marcus. Outside, rain fell hard against the windows, the same kind of rain that had started it all. Marcus looked out into the night, his reflections staring back at him, tired, defiant, unbroken. They wanted silence, he said softly. Instead, they gave me purpose. He didn't know it yet, but by dawn, Alina's expos would drop, and nothing in Brookhaven would ever be silent again. At 5:47 a.m., Brookhaven woke to fire. Not the kind that burned buildings, the kind that burned reputations. Alina Cruz's story dropped online before dawn, the shielded blue, inside Brookhaven's hidden record of racist policing. Within minutes, it spread like electricity. Screens across the city lit with the same headline, the same damning photos, the same quiet fury. Marcus sat in his office, unshaven, exhausted, the glow of his laptop the only light in the room. His pulse matched the scrolling comments. Unbelievable. So they knew that Maya tried to tell us. He clicked play on the embedded video. Alina's voice, steady but sharp, narrated over footage of police reports and archived complaints. For years, Officer Daniel Whitaker faced accusations of excessive force disproportionately targeting black citizens. Each complaint was dismissed by superiors citing insufficient evidence, the same superiors who promoted him twice. A pause, then her tone hardened. One of those superiors was Chief Raymond Rourke. Marcus exhaled slowly. He hadn't expected her to go that far. By 7 a.m., the city was split open. The police department went into lockdown, phones ringing nonstop. Protesters began gathering outside headquarters, holding signs that read "Protect and Serve, not Suppress and Silence." The mayor's office filled with a low electric hum, staffers whispering, phones buzzing, news screens looping the same clips. Lena walked in, clutching a cup of untouched coffee. They're calling for Rourke's resignation. Marcus looked up from his laptop, and Whitaker. Her voice was flat, suspended pending investigation. He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded once. That's the first honest sentence this city's spoken in months. Across town, Whitaker sat in his living room, curtains drawn, TV muted. The silence pressed against him like water. On the table lay his badge, dull under the morning light. He'd been told to stay home, avoid comment. The department was handling it. He laughed bitterly. Handling me, you mean? His wife stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes red from crying. What did you expect, Daniel? He turned toward her, his face collapsing. I did my job. She shook her head. No, you did what they let you do. He didn't answer. At noon, Chief Rourke stepped up to a podium flanked by the state flag and a wall of cameras. He read from a statement, voice measured, tone calm, eyes hollow. Effective immediately. I will be taking administrative leave. The allegations raised are serious, and they demand transparency. Brookhaven deserves accountability. A reporter called out, Chief, are you admitting to misconduct? Rourke hesitated the briefest flicker. Then he said quietly, I'm admitting we failed. Gasps rippled through the room. The broadcast cut to a stunned anchor. That was Chief Rourke, addressing a storm that has now engulfed the Brookhaven Police Department. The mayor's earlier statements appeared to have been substantiated by today's revelations. Marcus watched the live feed in silence. Lena turned to him. You won. He shook his head. No, I survived. By evening, the streets pulsed with chants. Crowds filled the park, the courthouse steps, the station gates. Alina stood among them, camera in hand, documenting everything, faces wet from rain, voices raw with fury and hope. A young man shouted into a megaphone. They said, our mayor lied. Now who's lying? The crowd roared back. Alina lowered her camera for a moment, searching the crowd. She spotted Marcus standing a short distance away, not on stage, not giving speeches, just watching. Their eyes met across the noise. She gave a small nod. Respect, not triumph. Marcus nodded back. Later that night, his office was quiet again. Darren entered, phone buzzing nonstop. They're calling it the biggest local scandal in 20 years. Doge's sending investigators. Half the council wants you to run for governor. Marcus smiled faintly. I'm not sure the world needs another politician. Darren smirked. Maybe not, but it needs someone who tells the truth. Marcus didn't answer. He looked out the window, where distant sirens wailed. Not in anger this time, but cleanup, restoration, aftermath. He walked home under streetlights still slick with rain. Outside his building, someone had left a small bouquet of white lilies and a note. Thank you for not staying silent. He stood there for a long moment, reading the note under the dim orange glow, before tucking it into his coat pocket. When he stepped inside, Lena was waiting in the living room, watching the news replay his press conference. She muted it as he entered. You did it. He dropped onto the couch beside her, head heavy in his hands. It doesn't feel like winning. She rested her head on his shoulder. It never does, but it feels like change. He looked at her at the exhaustion, the quiet resilience in her eyes, and nodded slowly. Then maybe that's enough. Outside, Brookhaven buzzed with the sound of reckoning, chants fading into the night, the first murmurs of reform beginning to take shape. In one office, downtown, an empty desk still bore a nameplate, Daniel Whitaker, asterisk, and on the mayor's desk, beneath a stack of fresh reports and unanswered emails, lay a single folded newspaper. Headline, Truth Wins, but scars remained. Marcus stared at it for a moment, then flipped it face down. Some victories, he thought, were too heavy to display. He leaned back in his chair, the city's lights flickering against the glass, the faint echo of protests still reaching him through the night, a reminder, a warning, a promise. And for the first time in months, he allowed himself to close his eyes. 3 months later, Brookhaven felt quieter, but not at peace. The investigations had swept through every department, unearthing rot the city no longer had the luxury to ignore. 3 officers dismissed, 2 supervisors indicted, Chief Rourke facing federal charges, and Daniel Whitaker, the man whose arrogance began it all, sat in a small courtroom, head bowed, awaiting sentencing. Marcus Hale didn't attend. He watched from his office instead, the muted courtroom feed flickering across the screen. Whitaker's lawyer spoke of career ruin, media vilification, a good man undone by one mistake. Marcus didn't flinch. He'd heard it all before. When the judge delivered the verdict, guilty on counts of obstruction and falsifying evidence, Marcus only exhaled once, not in triumph, in fatigue. Justice had come, but it was jagged, incomplete. Later that afternoon, Alina Cruz met him on the steps outside City Hall. You didn't show, she said, standing against the sunlight, recorder dangling at her side. Marcus gave a small shrug. Some endings don't need an audience. She studied him for a moment. You realize this story isn't over, right? I know. He nodded toward the bustling square. It just changed narrators. She smiled faintly. Then I'll keep writing. He looked at her, this journalist who'd risked everything to expose the truth, and said, make sure they remember the cost, not just the victory. Her smile faded. That's all I ever write about. The mayor's office had become a revolving door of change. Committees formed, new oversight boards drafted, but for every reform, there was resistance, quiet, bureaucratic, suffocating. One evening, Lena entered his office carrying 2 cups of coffee. Council passed the budget, she said. Accountability units approved. Marcus leaned back, rubbing his eyes. They'll fight every inch of it. Of course, she replied. But this time, they'll have to do it in daylight. He gave a tired smile. That's progress. It's a start. They stood by the window, watching the city lights ripple over wet streets. A patrol car rolled by, its siren off, its windows down. The sight was strangely ordinary. Lena said quietly. You know, for months, I kept thinking, if we just exposed the truth, it would fix everything. Marcus nodded. And now I think truth just cracks the wall. We still have to tear it down ourselves. He looked at her, and for the first time in weeks, he smiled, small, human, weary. Then let's keep tearing. A week later, Marcus attended a community forum at the rec center, his first public appearance since the verdict. The room was full but hushed, filled with residents still deciding whether to trust him again. He didn't speak from a podium. He stood among them. I didn't come here to talk, he said. I came to listen. A hand rose, an older man, gray-haired, voice trembling with anger. Why'd it take a mayor getting cuffed before anybody cared? Marcus met his gaze. Because power only listens when it's embarrassed. The room went still. Then a young woman in the back said softly, at least this time, it listened. The silence that followed wasn't hostile. It was heavy, alive. the sound of people beginning, cautiously, to believe, outside the center. Alina caught up to him again, recorder tucked in her coat. Care to comment on your new reputation as the mayor who made enemies in every direction? She asked. He smirked. You'll have to narrow it down. She laughed, then turned serious. You've changed the city, Marcus, whether they admit it or not. He looked out at the street, kids playing basketball under flickering lights, a police cruiser parked nearby, its officers watching but not intervening. Change is fragile, he said. One headline, one scandal, one election, and it starts to rot again. She nodded. Then we'll just have to keep the lights on. He turned to her, expression solemn. Then don't ever stop writing. I won't, she said. And for the first time, he believed her. That night, Marcus walked home alone. The air was cool, clean after rain. He passed the corner where it had all begun, the sidewalk, the crowd, the sound of a man shouting, hands where I can see them. The memory flashed, sharp and cold. He stopped there for a long time, listening to the distant hum of traffic. Then, quietly, he spoke into the empty street. I forgive you. Not to Whitaker, but to the city itself, to the silence that had made the violence possible. He took a deep breath and kept walking. Days turned into weeks. The noise faded. The city adapted, as cities do, but traces remained in the murals painted downtown, in the classrooms now, teaching civic rights, in the eyes of the people who stopped him on the street and said, thank you. Sometimes he smiled. Sometimes he didn't know how to. One morning he found Jaden in the kitchen, phone in hand, reading an article aloud. Mayor Hale's legacy reshapes Brookhaven's justice system. He grinned. They're finally saying your name without a headline scandal. Marcus poured coffee, staring out the window. They'll find something new soon enough. Yeah, Jaden said, but this time, maybe they'll remember what happens when they look away. Marcus turned to him, a faint smile breaking through. That's the point, son. We just keep making it harder to look away. At noon, he arrived at City Hall. On his desk sat the same folded newspaper from that night months ago. He unfolded it now. The headline was faded, but the words still clear. Truth wins, but scars remain. Marcus traced the letters with one hand, then placed the paper in a frame beside a new one from that morning's edition. A new chapter for Brookhaven. He stood for a moment, between the two headlines, the pain and the progress, and allowed himself a long, slow breath. Then he turned toward the window. The city stretched before him, imperfect, restless, alive. Let's get to work, he murmured. And for the first time since the cuffs clicked shut, he felt something almost forgotten. Not victory, not relief, not hope, asterisk.